Hello everyone, welcome to the next WADA's Aston Martin history little lesson. This one is for a couple of people that have mentioned the original 1990s Virage and wanted to know a little bit about that. So I thought I'd start with that one today, mainly because that's where I started my career 29 years ago, November the 19th, 1990. A slightly ironic number there, 19, but never mind, let's move away from that one. So this little car here is actually one I bought not that long ago, to be fair, but back in the day we had these given to us as employees one Christmas, I think it was, and we all got one each. It was a bit random, some got red ones, some got green ones. I actually had a red one, but never mind. They've become quite rare nowadays, and there's bucket loads of these green ones around. So, but it's a good little reminder back to that part of my career. I joined as a 19-year-old and was very, very naive to what I'd just let myself in for, and basically asked somebody on the first day, how many cars do we build? And the answer was 2. That's 2 cars a week. So it gives you an idea of the way things were back in late 1990. And unfortunately 3 months later, things started to go really pear-shaped, and not long after that we dropped down to half a car a week. So that kind of explains why, if you ever see any figures on our numbers back in that period, it was pretty hard going, really. I suppose a bit like how it is now, and in a way for maybe similar reasons. There were world events going on, which whenever there's a problem, cars obviously always tend to suffer it fairly early on. So it's always a bit of a battle, but you know, we're in better shape now than we were in 1990 to fight that. So really, back in the day, the Virage was the long-awaited replacement for the V8 series of cars that actually, if you trace them back, go back as far as 1970 with the DBS V8, when that first went into production. And that itself, if you go back even further, DBS and DBS V8, they were really based on an enhanced derivative of what would have been originally DB4. So DB4, DB5, DB6, DBS evolved really alongside DB6 Mark II, and it kind of lost a lot of its lightweight tubular construction and went for a slightly heavier style of construction below the surface skin. And of course Superleggera, that's where that modern name we use today goes way back to the first time we used it in production in 1958 with the DB4. And although we didn't call it Superleggera, once we got past DB6, the Mark I version, we stopped fitting the badges on the Mark II, mainly because it wasn't super light anymore, but it was still the same overall principle of a mild steel welded frame with aluminium panels over the top. I'll put a picture on with this so you can see what that looks like without the alley on the outside of it. So yes, so that's the purpose of the car. It was to replace the very last evolution of the DBS and DBS V8 derived family, if you like. So Virage was an all-new car in terms of how it appeared. It had a completely new aluminium body on the outside. It also had a very different version of the V8 engine. The V8 engine now had 32 valves instead of 16, still a 5.3 litre. Of course, it was electronic fuel injection, and it was rated at about 330 brake horsepower. And top speed on the car was 155 miles an hour. So not bad. I mean, talking 1989, 1990, that was pretty good going. And later on, we developed a car called the 6.3 litre, which was an aftermarket conversion offered by what was then called Works Service, which is now Aston Martin Works. And Works Service would take a car, either a brand new one or a second-hand one, and depending on how far you wanted to go, you could go with an engine and brake upgrade, or you could have that plus the bodywork altered, so you've got wider wheels, big flared wheel arches to go around them. Or later on we did a thing called the cosmetic 6.3, which was the looks but without the extra work done to the engine. So 6.3 engine was quite a big rework really. The heads were different, lots of other things. I'm sure lots of people that know more about technical stuff will pour on to the comments section and let me know exactly all the bits I've missed on the video. I'm just shooting from the hip as usual, doing this from memory. So really the Virage was a lovely looking car, but it was probably a design that would date quite quickly without a little bit of extra kind of input. So that's what happened. The 6.3 kind of held the fort, and then it was followed up eventually by the Vantage, which came out in 1993. We never called it a Virage Vantage. It was talked about in those terms, but from a marketing point of view, it was sold as a Vantage, mainly because the Virage itself had got itself a bit of a bad reputation in the early days. There were lots of hiccups with the Virage, mainly because we never had a massive, great big fleet of engineering cars that we would have today. So we'd build a handful of prototypes. The very first test car was actually a cut and shut Lagonda, cut down to 2 doors. We used to call it the Mule, and there was only a handful of prototypes really. And Victor Gauntlet, one of my favourite quotes from him was, a customer said to him, "How many prototypes do you build?" And he said, "All of them." Because basically when you bought any new car in that period from us, you were effectively a development engineer, because you would be telling us all the bits that normally an engineer would tell us, and then we would have to kind of put that right as we went along. So there was a whole series of what were known as CSPs, Customer Satisfaction Program, and they were numbered, and if I remember rightly, it was way over 20 of them, and they ranged from things like the alloy rear suspension A-frame had to be swapped over. Again, I don't know the reasons why, but there was obviously a risk of them cracking or something, so those were being swapped over when I first joined under warranty. And then they were right down to silly little things like there was nowhere to hang a coat, so there'd be a sort of retrofit coat hook to put your coat up in the back of the car. So lots of different things. And again, I know some of my former colleagues, parts and service, will be watching this and thinking it's a lot of rubbish as usual, and will no doubt be able to correct me on some of these things. My part in the company at the time was a lowly storeman. My job was to go and feed the parts for servicing the cars to the mechanics that worked in works or work service, and sometimes that would involve going over the road, as we called it, going across Tickford Street into production to go and rob bits off the production line, basically, or go kind of begging for them. So go over with a shortage note and try and come back with a load of stuff that could then be booked in and then booked out to the car jobs and keep the cars rolling out of the door. So that was kind of where I started my career, and that's where the Virage was at that point. Just to give you an idea as well, price-wise, I seem to remember, and I can't find it written down anywhere, but from memory, the price of a Virage in November 90 was something like £135,000. It was certainly 130 something. And that was a huge amount of money. I thought I'd just hit the jackpot because I'd got this job where I was going to be earning £9,000 a year, and the garage I worked in previously I was on 6. So I just had this whopping great big pay rise to go and work at an Aston Martin, where obviously I thought that was great to be able to say I worked at Aston Martin, and to get a huge pay increase as well was quite something. You could buy a house for about 40-50 grand for a 3-bed house, depending on whereabouts you were living in our sort of region. But a Virage was, three times that basically. Certainly 130 to 140,000. And if you had the 6.3 conversion, that was another 50 or so on top if you had the whole thing. So it kind of puts it in perspective a bit, really, in terms of how expensive it was compared to how a car would be today, I guess. The Virage itself, it developed as a family, really. It grew from being the coupe. We did the 6.3 conversions, and we did the Volante, which came out in about 94, 95. Again, I'll be corrected, no doubt. Shooting from the hip again. And that was a lovely looking car, convertible. We did 6.3 versions of it. And also, our lovely friends up in work service were coming up with all sorts of great ideas to kind of do special, what we would call really Q cars today, but we didn't have a department called Q because it was work service, and they did things like extended wheelbase four-door saloons. We did 5-door shooting brakes, Bowsers and Lagonda, but they were actually an Aston Martin Virage, but because they were longer and with the extra doors, they were badged as a Lagonda. Not many people probably have ever seen one of those. And we also did the shooting brakes, which we kind of built one, first of all, in production. I remember watching it being built. Very clever chap called Mike Loseby. Mike had worked on the Lagonda from an engineering point of view back in the 70s and 80s. And he'd also worked for DeLorean. So I think when he came to work for us, he was freelance. And I can remember just watching him and a couple of guys building this wonderful 2-door shooting brake on a great big metal fixed slab that we had inside the welding area for constructing the chassis. So they were building this thing on top of it and measuring it and kind of just making it up and designing it as they went along. But it was a beautifully built bit of kit. And we made one, and it was green. And then we made a red one. And the red one I remember being, I think about 92, 93. And we took that, in fact it was probably 93, we took it to the very first ever Goodwood Festival of Speed. And the car was, again, from memory, £167,000 for this 2-door shooting brake, which we nicknamed the shooting stick. And there we were at this kind of event that none of us knew what it was really all about. It was just a place called Goodwood, and this beautiful big house and a big grass field with a handful of car makers dotted around the outside of it. And I think we were there on Honda, Mercedes, and then a couple of champagne suppliers, people like that, and a huge, great big green field in the middle. And obviously people racing cars up the now famous hill route. But it was a tiny event compared to what it would be today. I think the crowd, you'd have to Google it, but it's probably something like 30,000 over the course of the weekend. And the Aston Martin stand, we had our event unit, which was a pop-up shop, which is why I was there, because we were selling merchandise from it. And over in front of the house, there was a concept car called DB7, which was there lit up with spot lamps at night time. And on our stand, we had the prototype Vantage with the headlights, the 6 headlamps. They weren't heated like they were on the production ones on this particular car. So we come in the morning, they'd be all steamed up overnight because of condensation. So we had to start the thing up, put all the lights on, full beam, leave it running just to burn away all the condensation. So it's a little memory I've got of that. And there is a shooting brake, and I'm guessing probably a Virage Volante as well. So it's funny how all this kind of just starts coming back again, really, as I sort of think more about the Virage and the way it developed and into the family that it became. In terms of numbers, and I'm going to have to pick my bit of paper up, so bear with me. Sorry about seeing my bald patch then. But in terms of production numbers, we built 358 coupes and 234 Volante versions, Virage Volante, and also another special bunch of cars called the LE. So there was a car called the Virage LE, and this is quite sort of typical Aston back in the day, really. So we've got, we're now in sort of 1995 from memory, 94, 95, and we've got 9 body shells up in our storage facility in Newport Pagnell, and we've got a brand new version of the V8 engine being worked on, a non-supercharged version for a car that would go into production and be called the V8 Coupe. So the idea was to kind of use the body shells that we've got, Virage body shells, and kind of make a hybrid, really. So use the technology for the new engine and build it into these 9 brand new but unused body shells. And those 9 body shells became the LE. And the LE was available in one colour spec only. Again, from the back of my mind, there might be one that got away that became another colour, but I'm sure Tim Cottingham will correct me in a comment on that one. But the cars were like a beautiful, deep greeny, kind of slightly like a mallard green with a tan interior, beige carpets, and also a very special grille. And we had no styling department back then, so there was no sort of Marek, there was no Miles. So what we had to do was what we decided to do was have a competition in the internal magazine to come up with a new grille. and a lovely chap called Rod designed this grill. And he made a prototype one in his lunch break, and he went and got a load of chrome strips that were used on the body of the Virage Volante and an axle, and he cut them all up and he pieced them all together with super glue and made up this wonderful V formation grill. And that's how that grill became the one that basically was the best design, and it won the competition. Rod got himself a new jacket because that was the prize, a waterproof jacket, which I think he used to wear to death. I remember seeing him wearing it for years and years afterwards. He must have been very proud of it. And and that's how that car came about. We took them to the Earls Court Motor Show and we sold them all. And those 9 cars have now become, collectible within the Virage family, really. And one of them belongs to a friend of mine, and it's a very special car because it's been turbocharged. Again, it's got an incredible amount of horsepower, this thing. I think from memory, it's over 1,000 brake horsepower. Absolutely incredible. And it was designed as an aftermarket thing, again, by Lynx, the people made famous for doing Jaguars. So that's a bit of a special one. I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find information about that car. It was at the London Concours, I think it was last year, on display. But it's a lovely, lovely bit of kit. So if you want to see cars like that, the best place to go when they're back on again are the Concours events that the Aston Martin Owners Club run. And you'll be able to find information about all the cars I've talked about on the Aston Martin Heritage Trust website, and also Tim Cottingham's website, which is astonmartins.com, which is like the kind of online Bible for Aston. But between that and the AMHT site, they're very, very good. Very, very good for information. And also look at the Aston Martin site, the main one. We have a heritage section. You'll also find links there to take you on to see Newport Pagnell, Aston Martin Works. If you want to buy one of these wonderful cars, talk to them. If they haven't got one, they might be able to find you one. So there we go. Anyway, listen, I've rambled on enough from the conservatory for another day. I hope you're all feeling okay. Hope everybody's well. Stay indoors. I've not left the house all day today. I've been listening to non-stop lawnmowers and motorbike riding past earlier, helicopter. Just stay indoors. Just stay indoors. It's the only way we're going to get rid of this bloody virus. And then we can all go back to looking at cars and polishing them and taking them to shows again. But hang in there, and I hope you're all right. If anybody wants anything, just drop me a message, and all the best to you. Take care. Bye-bye.